Beneath the shadow of Queen Elizabeth's reign, two men dared to seek the voice of the divine. John Dee, the celebrated scholar and advisor, and Edward Kelley, a man of mystery and unearthly claims, claimed to unlock a celestial language, a system of magic they believed was dictated by angels, granting access to divine wisdom and power. Their work promised truths beyond mortal comprehension, but came at a cost. Faith and ambition intertwined, driving them to the edge of revelation and ruin. Yet the angel magic system they created endures, studied and practiced by modern magicians who find in it both inspiration and awe. Their story is one of forbidden knowledge, the pursuit of power, and the mysteries that still linger in the spaces between history and myth. Dee and Kelley's legacy is not merely a chapter in the past, but a living reminder of humanity's unyielding hunger for the unknown. The air was heavy that day, thick with the scent of damp earth and ink-stained parchment. A figure sat hunched at his desk, surrounded by books whose spines whispered promises of ancient wisdom. His quill paused mid-scratch, his gaze drifting to the window where a pale light filtered through, illuminating the stillness of the room. The answers he sought were nowhere to be found, not in the calculations that filled his notes, not in the tomes that lined his walls. His hand trembled slightly as he placed the quill down. He was close to the edge of something. He could feel it, but his tools were failing him. The knock at the door was sharp and deliberate, breaking the quiet like a crack of thunder. The man who entered carried himself with an unsettling confidence, his eyes sharp and his smile faint, as though he had already glimpsed the secrets this place held. His presence disrupted the solemn order of the study, introducing a wildness that felt out of place among the disciplined lines of books and charts. He spoke of visions, of voices that spoke through glass, and of worlds unseen by ordinary men. The words carried a weight, as though they hung on a precipice between truth and falsehood. He produced a small object from his belongings, a smooth, dark mirror that shimmered with a faint and otherworldly glow, and laid it on the table between them. "Through this," he said, his voice low, "the hidden can be revealed." For a moment there was silence. The figure at the desk stared at the mirror, his mind racing. This stranger's words should have been absurd, but something about them rang true. Or perhaps it was the desperation, the hollow ache of so many years of unanswered questions, that made him believe. A chair was pulled closer, and the mirror was set between them, dark as the void itself. The stranger's hands hovered over it, his breathing steady. Then his voice began to tremble, low and uneven at first, but soon spilling forth in a torrent of cryptic words and phrases. He spoke of beings made of light and fire, of symbols beyond human understanding. The man at the desk listened, his hand flying across the page, recording every word with feverish intensity. When the stranger stopped, he leaned back in his chair, his face pale and drawn, as though the visions had drained something vital from him. The man at the desk lowered his quill. What had just transpired defied explanation, but he knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. Without a word, they exchanged a look that seemed to seal an unspoken agreement. Together they would press forward into the unknown. Whatever lay ahead, truth or madness, revelation or ruin, they would face it, bound by their shared hunger for what should not be sought. But even as the door closed behind the stranger, the shadows in the study seemed to grow darker, as though the act of gazing into the mirror had invited something else in. The door had closed, leaving behind an uneasy stillness. The mirror sat on the table, its surface dark and unyielding, as though guarding its secrets. To understand why the man at the desk would risk so much, his work, his faith, his very soul, one must first understand who he was and the path that had brought him here. John Dee was a man of contradictions, a towering intellect consumed by an unrelenting hunger for the divine. He had been called the greatest mind of his age, a man who saw the world not as it was but as it could be, a puzzle to solve, an order to decipher. Born in 1527 in Tower Ward, London, to a family of modest means, Dee's brilliance was evident from an early age. His father, Rowland Dee, worked as a mercer in the court of King Henry VIII, a connection that likely opened doors for the young John. Showing an insatiable appetite for learning, he attended the prestigious Chelmsford Chantry School before entering St John's College, Cambridge, at the age of 15. Dee's academic prowess was extraordinary. By 1546, he had earned his bachelor's degree and was made a Fellow of Trinity College. During this period, his fascination with mathematics, astronomy, and classical studies grew, as did his reputation for an almost obsessive work ethic. He reportedly studied for 18 hours a day, sleeping just 4 hours and devoting the remainder to prayer and reflection. His hunger for knowledge was matched only by his capacity to absorb it, and he quickly gained renown for his mastery of a wide range of subjects. In 1548, Dee travelled to Leuven in the Low Countries to continue his education under the great mathematician Geoffricius, who specialised in cartography and the science of navigation. It was here that Dee honed the mathematical skills that would later lay the groundwork for advances in navigation and exploration, including his involvement in helping to prepare England's first attempts at mapping uncharted territories. He also studied under Gerardus Mercator, whose famous map projections influenced Dee's understanding of the world's geometry. By the 1550s, Dee's expertise had drawn him into royal circles. He served as an advisor to Edward VI and later to Mary I, although his interest in astrology and the occult earned him suspicion under Mary's Catholic reign. In 1555, he was briefly imprisoned under charges of sorcery, accused of using magic to harm Mary's rule. While the charges were dismissed, the experience left Dee acutely aware of the precarious line he walked between revered scholar and feared magician. Under Elizabeth I, Dee's fortunes improved dramatically. The Queen valued his intellectual brilliance and sought his guidance, particularly in matters of astrology and navigation. It was Dee who selected the date of Elizabeth's coronation based on favourable astrological conditions, an act that secured his position in her court. Elizabeth referred to him affectionately as "my philosopher," entrusting him with tasks ranging from advising on matters of exploration to deciphering ancient manuscripts. Dee's ambitions were vast, stretching beyond the confines of any single discipline. He calculated the heavens with a precision that dazzled navigators and kings, his methods laying the foundation for voyages to uncharted lands. He corresponded with luminaries of his time, trading ideas on geometry, optics, and alchemy. His library, located at his home in Mortlake, was the largest in England, containing over 4,000 volumes that whispered of the ancient and the arcane, the forgotten wisdom of the ages. Yet even in the face of such accomplishments, there was a restlessness in Dee's soul. For all his mastery of the material world, he sensed a deeper truth just out of reach, hidden in the spaces between numbers and words. He believed in the great chain of being, the idea that all existence was connected by a divine order from the humblest blade of grass to the celestial spheres. And he believed it was his duty, his destiny, to uncover that order and bring humanity closer to the divine. This belief, noble in its ambition, began to isolate him. To his colleagues, Dee's pursuit of the esoteric was troubling, an eccentricity that placed him at the fringes of respectable scholarship. Still, his position as an advisor to Elizabeth shielded him from the harsher judgment of society. She valued his intellect and his counsel, relying on his astrological readings to guide decisions of state. For a time, this royal favour provided him the freedom to explore whatever realms his mind desired. But freedom can be a burden for the ambitious. Dee's quest for knowledge drove him to the edges of what could be understood, where the scientific blurred into the mystical and the mystical into the divine. He delved into alchemy, not for gold but for spiritual transformation. He studied ancient texts of angelology, convinced that the keys to the cosmos lay in understanding the language of the heavens. He performed intricate rituals seeking to commune with forces beyond human comprehension, and yet, despite his fervour, the answers he sought eluded him. His meticulous experiments produced only silence. His calculations, brilliant as they were, could not pierce the veil that separated man from the divine. The very intellect that had made him famous now seemed a cruel mockery, a tool too blunt to grasp the infinite. This was the state of John Dee in the early 1580s, a man revered and yet increasingly alone, a scholar surrounded by books yet haunted by questions they could not answer. He saw himself as a servant of God, chosen to reveal the secrets of creation, but his isolation grew heavier with each failure. It was in this moment of desperation that he turned to the occult, not as an escape but as a bridge, a final attempt to reach what lay beyond. He believed that divine wisdom was not beyond reach, but it required an intermediary, a guide to open the way. He searched for such a guide relentlessly, convinced that his mission was too important to abandon. When Edward Kelley arrived at his doorstep, bearing promises of angelic visions and forbidden knowledge, Dee did not hesitate. He could not afford to. He had spent his life looking for the voice of the divine, and he was willing to risk everything to hear it. For John Dee, the decision had been made. A leap of faith toward the divine, with a man whose claims promised everything he longed for. But the one offering visions of angels carried a past as opaque as the mirror he gazed into, a life tangled in shadows and half-truths. Edward Kelley claimed to be a seeker of truth, a medium for celestial voices, but others knew him as a man of deceit, a forger, a rogue, a trickster who wore ambition like armour. To some he was a prophet, to others a charlatan, and to those who looked too closely, perhaps he was both. Born in 1555 in Worcester, England, Edward Kelley's early life is a patchwork of whispers and gaps. His birth name may have been Edward Talbot, a name he occasionally used later in life, fueling speculation that he adopted Kelley as part of a reinvention or to distance himself from past transgressions. Little is known of his education or upbringing, but accounts suggest that he may have attended grammar school and acquired a working knowledge of Latin, an invaluable skill for anyone dabbling in alchemical manuscripts or ecclesiastical texts. By the time Kelley stepped into historical record, trouble had already marked his life. In 1580, he was sentenced to have his ears cropped, a humiliating punishment typically reserved for forgers and counterfeiters. The charge stemmed from his alleged role in forging land deeds, though the details remain hazy. Whatever the truth, the mutilation was both a literal and figurative scar, branding him as a man of dubious reputation. Kelley's fortunes did not end with disgrace. Instead, he embarked on a journey that seemed to thrive on the margins of respectability, weaving himself into the shadowy world of alchemy, a realm where failure could be excused as divine mystery and success could rewrite fortunes. He claimed to have stumbled upon a mysterious alchemical powder, a red substance that he insisted could transmute base metals into gold. According to one tale, Kelley discovered the powder in a burial site near Glastonbury, alongside a manuscript written in an unknown language. Whether this story was a fabrication or a masterful embellishment, it secured him an audience among patrons eager for alchemical wonders. Kelley's charm and bold claims soon opened doors in noble courts and alchemical circles. He spoke with confidence of ancient texts, forgotten formulas, and the secrets of transmutation. His knowledge of alchemical principles, whether genuine or gleaned from his travels and readings, allowed him to pass convincingly among those who sought the philosopher's stone. Yet his alchemical pursuits were only one facet of his talents. It was his gift as a scryer that would secure his place in history. Kelley possessed an uncanny ability to gaze into reflective surfaces, crystals, mirrors, polished obsidian, and summon forth visions. He described angels and spirits with vivid detail, weaving narratives so compelling that even skeptics found themselves captivated. Kelley claimed to see beings that transcended human comprehension, figures radiant with light, their messages profound yet cryptic. Whether these visions were genuine or an elaborate performance remains a matter of debate, but there is no denying the skill with which he delivered them. By the time Kelley crossed paths with John Dee in 1582, his life was already a delicate balancing act of ambition and desperation. His claims had brought him moments of success, but no lasting security. The alchemical powder, the tales of angelic visions, the whispers of secret knowledge, they had earned him both admirers and enemies. Dee, with his towering intellect and unshakable faith in the divine, must have seemed to Kelley like both an opportunity and a challenge. Here was a man who sought the voice of God itself, a man willing to believe in visions and miracles, if only they could be delivered with enough conviction. But what did Kelley truly believe? Was he a true seeker? Someone who glimpsed the infinite and sought to share it? Or was he merely an opportunist, spinning tales to secure his place in Dee's orbit? Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in the space between. Kelley's accounts of angelic beings and celestial languages were delivered with a fervour that suggests belief, but there was always a flicker of something else beneath the surface. Calculation. A wariness that hinted at deeper motives. Kelley's life before Dee was one of uncertainty and reinvention, a man constantly reshaping himself to fit the moment. Whether driven by faith, ambition, or the simple need to survive, he brought with him a gift that would transform both their lives. He offered Dee a glimpse into the unknown, a bridge to the divine, but that bridge was built on unstable ground. For Kelley, the work ahead would not only define his legacy, but also test the limits of his faith and his willingness to deceive. The sessions began with ritual precision, guided by John Dee's belief that sacred order was the key to unlocking divine communication. Every detail of the process was carefully considered, from the arrangement of the room to the exact words of the invocations. Dee prepared the space by consecrating it with prayers and alchemical formulas, drawing upon both Christian liturgy and mystical traditions to purify the air. At the centre of the table sat the scrying device itself, sometimes an obsidian mirror polished to a glass-like sheen, and other times a crystal ball, both objects carefully chosen to act as conduits for the visions. The rituals often began with Dee reciting a series of invocations and prayers. These were not random utterances, but carefully composed entreaties, blending the language of scripture with elements of Kabbalistic mysticism. He invoked the name of God and the hierarchies of angels, calling upon the archangels and divine powers to open a channel between their world and the celestial spheres. These invocations were paired with the placement of specific tools in precise configurations, each symbol imbued with layers of spiritual meaning. Edward Kelley, as the scryer, would take his position before the scrying device, his body and mind prepared for the task. The process required intense focus, as Kelley would gaze deeply into the mirror or crystal, his mind slipping into a state that hovered between meditation and trance. He described the experience as being both physical and spiritual, a sensation of otherworldly forces pressing upon him, the visions arriving not as dreams but as vivid realities. The angels Kelley claimed to see were described in extraordinary detail. They were luminous beings, sometimes appearing as warriors clad in light, other times as abstract forms too vast or complex to fit human comprehension. They communicated in a language that was unfamiliar to Kelley, but unmistakably structured, what Dee would later call the Angelic or Enochian language. This language was composed of characters and sounds that bore no resemblance to any known human tongue, a fact that further convinced Dee of its divine origin. Dee recorded the sessions in painstaking detail, transcribing Kelley's words as he described the visions and dictated the angelic messages. These records, known as the spiritual diaries, often included long streams of angelic text accompanied by translations and interpretations provided by the angels themselves. The messages ranged from cryptic prophecies to detailed instructions on how to construct magical tools and perform further rituals. The angels were not mere passive informants. They were said to offer specific commands, sometimes issuing stern rebukes if the rituals were not carried out to their satisfaction. Kelley's tone would change as he conveyed these messages, his voice taking on a strange authority that Dee interpreted as a sign of true possession by higher powers. Each session followed a rhythm: preparation, invocation, scrying, transcription, and reflection. Yet, for all the rigor Dee imposed on the process, the results were unpredictable. Some sessions yielded pages of intricate revelations. Others were marked by silence or confusion, as though the connection to the angels had been severed. Dee, ever the scientist, sought patterns in these fluctuations, speculating that human error, celestial alignments, or even the angel's own will could influence the outcomes. Through these sessions, they built the foundations of what Dee believed was a divine magical system. Yet the process was fraught with challenges. Kelley often grew impatient with the repetitive nature of the rituals, his frustration flaring when the visions were slow to come. Dee, in turn, struggled to reconcile Kelley's volatile temperament with his own need for meticulous control. Despite their differences, the work pressed forward, driven by their shared ambition to unlock the secrets of the universe. But even in those early days, the balance between them was fragile, the partnership already showing cracks that would widen with time. The rituals, the visions, the tools, they were all pieces of a puzzle whose image neither man could yet fully see. What they did see, however, was enough to compel them onward, deeper into the mysteries of angelic magic. The visions began with a light, Kelley said, an intense brilliance that seemed to radiate from the very surface of the crystal. From this light emerged forms that defied earthly description, beings whose appearance shifted as though their true nature could not be contained within mortal understanding. At times they appeared as winged figures clothed in radiant fire, their faces both beautiful and terrifying. Other times they were more abstract, patterns of light and energy that pulsed with meaning, forms that seemed to dissolve and reform with every heartbeat. Kelley described their voices as both overwhelming and precise, a sound that bypassed the ears and resonated within the mind itself. Their words carried an undeniable authority, spoken in a language that was wholly unfamiliar yet felt ancient, as if it had existed since the beginning of time. This language, which would come to be known as Enochian, was at the heart of their revelations. The Enochian language was not mere gibberish or symbolic gestures, it was a fully formed system of communication. Over the course of their sessions, the angels dictated an alphabet of 21 unique characters, along with its grammar and syntax. Each letter carried both a phonetic sound and a mystical significance, its shape imbued with meaning. The angels insisted that this was the original language of creation, the very words spoken by God to bring the universe into existence. For Dee, this was proof of its divine origin, a pure language untainted by human imperfection, a key to unlocking the secrets of the cosmos. The angels did not merely dictate letters or abstract concepts, they conveyed specific instructions for constructing magical tools and charts that Dee believed were essential to accessing higher realms. The most intricate of these was the Table of Enoch, a large grid composed of rows and columns of Enochian letters, each placement determined by angelic command. These grids, they claimed, held the structure of the universe itself, a map of celestial hierarchies and divine power. Kelley often described the angels as impatient, their words coming in bursts that he struggled to keep up with. They chided the pair when their rituals were imperfect or when their understanding faltered. Some messages were delivered with urgency, as if the angels were racing against time to impart their wisdom before some unseen barrier closed again. Others were cryptic, requiring Dee to spend hours or days parsing their meaning. Not all communications were straightforward. The angels introduced a variety of celestial beings, each with its own role in the divine hierarchy. Some were messengers, bringing revelations from higher powers. Others were guardians, protecting the secrets they conveyed. Kelley recounted visions of angelic councils, gatherings of radiant beings who debated and issued decrees. He described their names, strange and unpronounceable by human tongues, and their ranks within the celestial order. For D, these revelations were not merely spiritual, they were a mandate. He believed the angels were offering humanity a chance to ascend, to reclaim a unity with the divine that had been fractured by the fall. Through the Enochian language and the magical system it conveyed, D saw the potential for humanity to bridge the gap between the material and the celestial, to restore the harmony of creation. But these communications also carried warnings. The angels spoke of challenges to come, of trials that would test D and Kelley's faith and resolve. They hinted at dangers lurking within the unseen realms, forces that sought to corrupt or deceive. The visions left Kelley visibly shaken, and D, though steadfast in his belief, began to realize the weight of the task before them. The process of receiving these revelations became both a source of awe and a trial of endurance. Kelley's sessions left him drained, his descriptions growing darker and more fragmented as the weeks turned into months. For D, the task of transcribing and interpreting the angelic messages consumed his every waking moment. The boundaries between his earthly duties and his divine mission blurred, and the cost of their work began to take its toll. Still, the revelations continued, each session adding new layers to the intricate system the angels were revealing. To D, this was nothing less than the reconstruction of Eden itself, a return to the purity of divine language and order. But the strain on their partnership and the forces they were now entangled with hinted that their journey into the divine might not end with the clarity they sought. Instead, it was leading them deeper into an unfolding mystery, one that offered glimpses of the infinite but demanded ever greater sacrifices. The angelic revelations, fragmented and cryptic as they were, began to coalesce into something more. Piece by piece, session by session, D and Kelley constructed a system unlike anything that had existed before, a bridge between mortal and divine, a magical framework dictated, they believed, by celestial beings themselves. This was no mere collection of symbols or incantations. It was a vast and intricate structure that sought to unify the spiritual and the material. At the center of this system lay the Tables of Enoch, vast grids composed of rows and columns of Enochian letters. Each letter, dictated by the angels, was said to hold divine significance. The tables were not arbitrary. Their arrangement followed patterns that D believed corresponded to the celestial hierarchy and the structure of the cosmos itself. 4 large tables, one for each element, air, water, earth, and fire, formed the foundation, each guarded by specific angelic beings. Within these grids lay the names of angels, the keys to their power, and the maps to their realms. To use these tables, the angels provided detailed instructions for rituals and invocations. The Holy Table, inscribed with sacred symbols and placed at the heart of their workspace, served as the physical anchor for these rituals. The Sigillum Dei Ameth, wax discs inscribed with complex geometric designs, were placed beneath the legs of the table. These discs were believed to be conduits of divine energy, connecting the earthly plane to the celestial spheres. One larger sigillum, intricately carved and central to their rituals, was placed beneath the scrying crystal or mirror, amplifying the connection between Kelley and the angelic realm. The layman, another key tool, was a small inscribed tablet worn by Kelley during the sessions. It was said to enhance his ability to receive and transmit angelic messages, ensuring the purity of the communication. D meticulously recorded every instruction given by the angels for creating these objects, treating their words as sacred mandates. But the system was not purely physical. The Enochian language itself was woven into every aspect of the magic. The angels provided not only an alphabet, but also a grammar, syntax, and pronunciation rules. D labored tirelessly to organize and codify the language, convinced that it held the key to understanding the divine order. He believed that speaking the Enochian words aloud, in the precise manner dictated by the angels, could invoke their power and presence. D's dedication to this work grew obsessive. He spent countless hours poring over his notes, refining his diagrams, and attempting to decipher the deeper meanings of the revelations. His belief in the system's divine origin was absolute, To him, every letter and symbol was a fragment of God's truth, entrusted to humanity through his and Kelley's work. Yet the sheer scope of the task often overwhelmed him. The more the angels revealed, the more complex the system became, and the more questions it raised. Kelley, meanwhile, began to show signs of strain. The visions he described during the sessions grew darker, more disjointed, and at times contradictory. He expressed frustration with the angels' demands, questioning their purpose and intentions. Was this truly divine communication, or were they being led astray by forces they did not fully understand? Dee dismissed such doubts, his faith unwavering, but Kelley's skepticism lingered. There were moments when Kelley's behavior hinted at something deeper, a flicker of guilt, a hesitation that suggested he might not fully believe in the visions he described. Some accounts suggest that Kelley may have embellished or even fabricated certain details, driven by a mixture of fear, ambition, and the desire to maintain his place in Dee's world. Whether true or not, the dynamic between the two men became increasingly fraught, their shared purpose clouded by unspoken tensions. Still, the system grew. By the late 1580s, Dee and Kelley had created a framework of rituals, symbols, and language that was unlike anything in the Western mystical tradition. It was both a magical tool and a theological statement, a system that claimed to reveal the very mechanics of creation and the pathway to divine wisdom. But with each new revelation, the cost of their work became more apparent. Dee's obsession consumed him, pulling him further from his earthly responsibilities and isolating him from the world outside his study. Kelley, burdened by the weight of his role, grew restless and volatile, his doubts festering beneath the surface. Together they had created something extraordinary, but the cracks in their partnership were growing wider, threatening to undermine the very foundation of their work. What they had built was immense, intricate, and powerful, but its true nature remained uncertain. Was it a divine gift, a cosmic puzzle waiting to be solved, or the product of two brilliant yet fallible minds caught in their own illusions? That question would linger even as the next chapter of their story unfolded. The system they had built was vast, its complexity rivaled only by the strain it placed upon its creators. For years, Dee and Kelley had shared the weight of their divine work, but ambition and belief had bound them with fragile threads that now began to fray. The cracks in their partnership were not sudden but gradual, growing deeper with each session. Kelley's frustrations, once fleeting, became more frequent, his demeanor shifting from reluctant cooperation to open hostility. The visions that had once flowed with startling clarity now came haltingly, if at all. Kelley spoke of the toll the scrying took on him, the physical and mental exhaustion that left him hollow. He questioned the demands of the angels, their cryptic messages, and their ceaseless requirements for more rituals, more tools, more sacrifice. To Dee, these doubts were heresy, a betrayal of the sacred mission they had been entrusted with. Dee's faith remained steadfast, but it had become a kind of blindness. He was consumed by the revelations, his days filled with transcription, his nights spent poring over the angelic messages in search of hidden meanings. The outside world, with its politics, its wars, and its demands, had all but disappeared. Even his family, who had travelled with him throughout Europe during this period, found themselves relegated to the edges of his consciousness. Kelley saw this and resented it. The singular devotion Dee had for the angels, a devotion that left little room for human connection. The breaking point came in the spring of 1587, in the city of Trebona. It was there, amid the quiet stillness of rural Bohemia, that the angels delivered a message unlike any they had received before. Kelley, his voice faltering as he relayed their words, claimed the angels had instructed the two men to share everything, including their wives. This revelation, stunning in its audacity, sent shockwaves through their already fragile bond. Dee, ever obedient to the angelic will, hesitated but ultimately complied. He saw the command as a test of faith, an opportunity to demonstrate his absolute trust in the divine plan. But Kelley's reaction was different. Whether he saw the demand as a divine truth or a cruel manipulation, it struck a nerve. This was no longer about celestial revelations or cosmic order. It was a violation, a tearing apart of boundaries that should never have been crossed. The act was carried out, but the cost was far greater than either man had anticipated. The wife-swapping incident left scars that could not heal. Kelley grew increasingly resentful, his doubts about the angels and Dee solidifying into something darker. He began to distance himself from the sessions, his reluctance turning into outright refusal. Dee, desperate to continue their work, pleaded with Kelley to remain, but the trust between them was gone. Kelley saw Dee's unwavering faith not as strength, but as delusion, a dangerous obsession that had consumed them both. By late 1587, Kelley had reached his breaking point. He declared that he could no longer serve as a scryer, that the visions had become too much for him to bear. Some accounts suggest that Kelley's departure was also fueled by his growing ambition. His reputation as an alchemist had reached the courts of Europe, and he had begun to receive offers from nobles and kings eager to unlock the secrets of transmutation. To Kelley, these offers represented a way out, a chance to escape the suffocating weight of Dee's expectations and pursue his own path. For Dee, Kelley's departure was a devastating blow. Without his scryer, the sessions came to an end, the angelic voices falling silent. Dee attempted to continue the work on his own, but the system they had built required both of them, the scholar and the medium, the structure and the vision. Alone, Dee could not summon the angels, and the revelations that had once seemed so close now felt impossibly distant. The emotional toll of their collaboration lingered long after they parted ways. Dee returned to England, a man broken by loss, his faith intact but his spirit fractured. Kelley, meanwhile, pursued a career in alchemy, his promises of gold and transformation leading him to fortune and eventually imprisonment. Their partnership, born of ambition and belief, had unravelled under the weight of its own contradictions, leaving both men to grapple with the consequences of what they had dared to create. Their work was not finished, but their paths would never cross again. What remained were the fragments of their system, a puzzle they had begun but could not complete, a divine language, an intricate framework of magical tools, and a story that blurred the line between revelation and madness. The end of their partnership marked the beginning of a slow unraveling for both men, their shared dream collapsing into personal ruin. John Dee returned to England in 1589, a man weighed down by failure and loss. His once great reputation, built on decades of scholarship and service, had eroded during his years abroad. Rumours of his involvement in the occult clung to him, staining his name and overshadowing his achievements. His financial situation was dire. His time in Europe had drained his resources, and his years of neglecting his royal duties had cost him the favour of the court. Queen Elizabeth, who had once relied on his counsel, offered him a meagre appointment as the Warden of Christ's College in Manchester. It was a hollow gesture, a role far beneath his stature and devoid of the support he needed to maintain his family. Dee's final years were marked by a painful decline. His health deteriorated, his influence faded, and his intellectual pursuits became increasingly isolated. The angels he had once believed were guiding his destiny had fallen silent, leaving him to grapple with the emptiness of their absence. By the time of his death in 1609, Dee was living in obscurity, his vast library sold off to pay debts, his legacy reduced to whispers of a man who had reached too far into the unknown. Edward Kelley's trajectory after their separation was no less tragic, though it followed a different path. Kelley's reputation as an alchemist had grown during his time with Dee, and he used this to secure positions in the courts of Europe. He found favour with Emperor Rudolf II, a monarch with a deep fascination for the occult and the promise of transmutation, the alchemical process that promised to turn lead into gold. Kelley, ever the opportunist, fed the emperor's hopes, claiming to possess the secret of the philosopher's stone. For a time, Kelley enjoyed wealth and privilege, rewarded handsomely for his alchemical promises, but those promises were as elusive as the gold he claimed to create. When his experiments failed to produce results, his patrons grew impatient. Kelley's charisma, which had carried him so far, could not shield him from the growing suspicion that he was a fraud. In 1591, Kelley was imprisoned by Rudolf II in Hernevin Castle in Bohemia, accused of deceiving the emperor and failing to fulfill his grand claims. Kelley's attempts to escape ended in disaster. Accounts differ, but one story suggests he leapt from a castle wall, breaking his legs in the process, injuries from which he would never recover. He died in 1597, a prisoner of his ambitions, his body as broken as his dreams. The story of John Dee and Edward Kelley did not end with their deaths. What they created, the angelic language, the intricate system of magic, and the vision of a cosmos bound by divine order, took on a life of its own, surviving the centuries and weaving itself into the fabric of esoteric traditions. For much of the 17th and 18th centuries, Dee's writings lay dormant, scattered across collections and libraries. The system they described, complex and arcane, seemed destined to fade into obscurity. But in the late 19th century, a new generation of occultists rediscovered Dee's spiritual diaries and the secrets they contained. Among these were members of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, a secret society devoted to the study and practice of Western esotericism. The Golden Dawn, founded in 1888, saw in Dee and Kelley's system a bridge between the Renaissance pursuit of divine knowledge and their own rituals of ceremonial magic. They adopted Enochian magic as a cornerstone of their practices, refining and expanding upon it to suit their spiritual framework. To them, the angelic language was not simply a relic of the past, but a living tool, a means of connecting with higher realms and unlocking hidden truths. Aleister Crowley, one of the most infamous figures in occult history, further popularized Enochian magic in the early 20th century. Crowley, deeply influenced by the Golden Dawn and its teachings, integrated Dee and Kelley's system into his own spiritual philosophy, Thelema. He conducted Enochian rituals to invoke angels, explore the astral planes, and seek guidance from higher powers. In Crowley's hands, the system evolved, becoming both a method of personal transformation and a way to challenge the boundaries of human perception. Beyond magical orders, Enochian magic left its mark on literature and culture. H.P. Lovecraft, fascinated by arcane languages and forbidden knowledge, drew inspiration from Dee's work in crafting the eldritch mythos of his stories. Modern fantasy and science fiction, from Neil Gaiman to television series like Supernatural, have echoed the themes of divine communication and celestial languages, their narratives shaped by the echoes of Dee and Kelley's legacy. In modern times, Enochian magic continues to captivate practitioners and scholars alike. For magicians, it offers a structured yet otherworldly system of communication with higher realms, its rituals steeped in a sense of mystery and power. Its language, with its unique alphabet and syntax, remains an object of fascination, studied both for its mystical properties and its linguistic complexity. For scholars, Dee's writings provide a window into the Renaissance mind, a blend of science, religion, and esotericism that reflects humanity's enduring quest to understand its place in the cosmos. The cultural fascination with Enochian magic lies not just in its perceived power, but in what it represents. The audacity to seek the divine, the courage to step beyond the limits of earthly knowledge, and the willingness to confront the unknown. It is a reminder that, even in the face of failure and doubt, the pursuit of the infinite leaves a legacy that resonates far beyond its time. Through the centuries, the angelic magic system has persisted, a testament to the enduring allure of the unknown. It lives on in the rituals of practicing magicians, in the pages of history and fiction, and in the imaginations of those who dare to wonder what secrets might still lie hidden beyond the veil. The angelic magic system that John Dee and Edward Kelley brought into the world remains a puzzle, its true nature unresolved. At its core is the Enochian language, a strikingly unique construct that continues to baffle linguists, occultists, and scholars alike. Was this language truly a divine gift, as Dee believed, or the product of human ingenuity? perhaps even a subconscious creation born of Kelley's vivid imagination. The Enochian language has a formal structure that sets it apart from other so-called constructed or invented languages. Its alphabet of 21 letters, grammatical rules, and phonetic coherence suggest a complexity that has drawn comparisons to natural languages. Yet no historical parallels exist for its origins, leaving the question, could Kelley have invented such a system himself? Supporters of this theory argue that Kelley, as a well-read man with a talent for storytelling, might have fabricated the language to maintain Dee's trust and secure his place in their partnership. But this explanation falters in the face of the language's intricacy, which some believe surpasses what could be improvised during live scrying sessions. For psychologists, the Enochian revelations open another door of inquiry. Kelley's visions and Dee's unyielding faith in their authenticity have been interpreted through the lens of altered states of consciousness. Kelley's descriptions of radiant beings and otherworldly realms mirror the kinds of experiences reported by individuals in trance states under the influence of certain substances or during intense meditation. Some modern scholars speculate that Kelley may have induced a form of self-hypnosis or entered a state akin to modern notions of flow, allowing his subconscious mind to generate the angelic language and imagery. Others turn to the cultural and spiritual context of Dee and Kelley's time for answers. The late 16th century was an era steeped in religious upheaval, scientific discovery, and esoteric exploration. Dee, caught between the worlds of science and mysticism, was a man whose intellect was matched only by his unrelenting desire to connect with the divine. His belief that the Enochian language represented the original tongue of creation reflects a Renaissance mindset in which the sacred and the empirical often overlapped. For Dee, science and spirituality were not opposites, but complementary paths to understanding the universe. In modern practice, the Enochian system has taken on a life far removed from its origins. Practicing magicians use the language and rituals to invoke angelic beings, explore astral planes, and seek personal transformation. Some describe their experiences with Enochian magic as profoundly spiritual, a means of accessing parts of the psyche or higher consciousness that are otherwise unreachable. Others see it as a tool for connecting with archetypal energies, interpreting the angels not as literal beings, but as symbols of universal forces. The system's appeal to contemporary practitioners lies in its duality. On one hand, it is a structured, almost scientific approach to magic, with its grids, symbols, and linguistic rules. On the other, it is deeply mystical, offering a direct line to the divine, or the illusion of one. This tension between structure and mystery mirrors the relationship between Dee and Kelley, a partnership that fused scholarly rigor with intuitive chaos. Modern scholars and practitioners alike debate the legacy of Dee and Kelley's work. Was it a divine transmission, an elaborate deception, or something in between? Interviews with contemporary occultists reveal a spectrum of belief. Some embrace the Enochian system as a spiritual truth, while others view it as a psychological tool, a framework for accessing the subconscious and engaging with the mind's hidden depths. Yet all seem to agree on one point. The system's power lies in its ability to provoke awe and wonder, its origins as compelling as its application. For skeptics, the enduring fascination with Enochian magic is a testament not to its truth, but to the human capacity for invention. For believers, it is proof that the divine speaks to those who dare to listen. Whether viewed through the lens of faith or doubt, one fact remains. The questions Dee and Kelley raised about the nature of language, the structure of the universe, and humanity's place within it have lost none of their resonance. The Enochian system, born of desperation and belief, continues to captivate those who seek to bridge the gap between the earthly and the divine. The story of John Dee and Edward Kelley is not one of resolution but of questions that echo through the centuries, unanswered and alive. Their work, whether divine revelation or human invention, stands as a testament to humanity's relentless pursuit of the unknown. It reminds us that the line between genius and madness, faith and delusion, is often as thin and fragile as the veil they sought to pierce. Dee and Kelley's angelic magic system endures not because it provides answers, but because it embodies the mystery itself. It is a language no one truly understands, a map to a cosmos that defies comprehension. For all its intricacy, its greatest power lies in its invitation, to imagine, to believe, to reach beyond the ordinary. It asks the same questions that drove Dee to his crystal and Kelley to his visions, questions that resonate deeply with anyone who has ever looked at the stars and wondered what lies beyond. Their partnership was imperfect, their journey fraught with tension and doubt, yet together they created something that transcends their flaws. It is this duality that gives their story its weight, the brilliance of their ambition balanced against the frailty of their humanity. Dee's meticulous documentation and unshakable faith collided with Kelley's improvisation and uncertainty, creating a system that reflects the contradictions of its creators. And yet, even as their lives ended in ruin, their legacy grew. The language they called angelic continues to inspire, not because it explains the divine, but because it offers a glimpse of it. Their story endures not as a cautionary tale, but as a celebration of humanity's boundless curiosity. The same force that drives explorers to new worlds, scientists to new discoveries, and seekers to the edges of what is known. Dee and Kelley's greatest contribution may not be the Enochian language or the magical system they built, but the enduring allure of their quest itself. Their work whispers to us across time, reminding us that to seek is to dream, and that the greatest mysteries are those that remain unsolved. For in mystery lies possibility, and in possibility, the infinite.